My little shardies, welcome and welcome back. Today I think I'm going to be working in Worlds Within Worlds by Kerby Rosanes. And I think instead of doing an entire image, they just take way too long. Or I take too long in coloring them. I'm very slow when I color. I think I'm going to show you guys how I do the trees in this image. So I'll just do one of the trees and then I might do some follow-up videos with the other parts of this image. But today I think I'm going to focus on just one of these trees to show you guys how I do trees. Alright, I think I'm just going to do this one in the front here. And like I said, I'll probably do follow-up videos with other parts of this image to show you guys, but if I break it down one piece at a time, it's going to make it much more manageable. I can spend probably 10, 12, 14 hours on this image, and I'm sure you guys don't want to watch a 14-hour video. So the first thing I'm going to use is 947 Dark Umber, and where Kerby has already made a lot of like little lines and shading, I'm assuming that's where he's going to want the dark. I'm trying to zoom in on this a little bit more so I can kind of point out. You see here where he's got all the little dark shading spots? I'm going to assume that's where he wants the darkest colors. So that's where I'm going to start right now with my 947 Dark Umber. And I'm just going to go into those dark spots. And I'm going to go lighter as I go up. So I'm going to go darker toward where the most shading is. And then lighter as I'm coming down. Some people like to go light to dark. I usually do dark and then light, and then I'll do my midtones in the middle. I know that's kind of weird. And a lot of times if I'm not coloring on camera, I'll just do one little spot and then move on and just go back and forth. So I usually have like a set of pencils that I'm using for that image that I have set aside from the rest of my pencils. Because I'm kind of like ADD about it. I bounce around the page. I get bored easily, which is probably why I like Kerby's images so much, because there's so much going on. But sometimes I find them a little intimidating. So I have realized, and I've said this in pretty much all of my other videos, that it's best to just kind of get started and then see what happens. Putting pencil to paper is the hardest thing. Once you start putting the colors on there, you know, it makes it a lot easier. And in an image like this that has a lot of extra detail going on, when you start to put color in some areas, it highlights the others so it doesn't make it as intimidating. So especially if you're down here in the grassy areas, there's all kinds of things in there like a turtle and stuff like that. So if you were starting to do the areas around it, it makes the turtle stand out a little bit more so it's not as intimidating. So if I was coloring more than one tree right now, which I'm not, I would probably go ahead and just try to use this color on the areas that I know for sure is going to need it on the other trees, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try to stick to just one tree. Trust me, it will take long enough. So you see how there's, oh, sorry. See how there's branches and stuff coming up out of that tree? I'm not even going to worry about those right now. I'm just going to focus on this part and then I'll work my way up. So right now that is, oh wait, hold on, got the spot down here. And then that little knot I think would be darker. And then I think right here too, I'm going to put a little shading there. Alright, now I'm going to come through with 946 dark brown, and I'm just going to go next to those areas and kind of up from them and blend right into that color. I've seen people do trees so many different ways. Sometimes you can do it dark on the outside and lighter on the inside. I did that in a previous video. I'm not sure I'm going to do that this time. I'm just kind of going with it and I'll see what it looks like when I'm done. And I'm following some of these lines he has here just to kind of highlight them a little bit, but I didn't want them to be the darkest brown. And I'm not sure I got any of that up there on video. Let me zoom out just a little tiny bit. Sorry guys. There, that's better. So up in this area I put a lot more brown than I did down here so far. Again, you can always add as you go. So if you start putting some of the lighter browns in and you want to put a little bit of darker, you can do that. It's a lot easier to change the color if you're using a lighter color than it is to use a darker color. So kind of keep that in mind. Sometimes it's good to go on the lighter side when you're using dark, because it's really hard to make it less dark. And I don't know if you've ever tried to erase colored pencil, but it doesn't erase very well. Usually you're committed. And again, I think the trunk of this tree is going to be pretty dark. And with all the foliage there, I want to make sure that the tree definitely doesn't blend in with the foliage. So I'm going to make this darker down here. And I probably should have put like a really dark brown there, like my darkest shade of brown. And you can come through with a little black too and add it to there just to darken it up just a little bit. See, like this right here is going to be really dark. I know he's not showing that it's really dark, but it will be because the foliage that's sitting in front of it. Oops, that's that tree there. Always making mistakes. Just go with it. Alright, now I'm going to come in with my third color, which is going to be 1082 Chocolate. And I'm just going to go right up from there. This image is a lot more detailed than some images. Kerby tends to do that quite a bit. So I have to make sure my pencils are pretty sharp on this one because the details are really, really small. And again, I'm going to come up with this on the outside of this tree here, frame it a little bit. Go into that branch. And I'm just I'm coloring over top of some of the other colors that I already put on there really lightly when I hit that spot. So I'm going a little darker in the open areas, and when I'm going over some of the darker areas that have already been colored, I'm kind of lightening up my hand a little bit. I'm going to put just a little... Bring this in, and as I go into the center of the tree, I'm lightening up a little bit because I intend to kind of make it a gradient. So I want to blend the last color into that. Just color up a little bit more. Kind of like that. I'm going to come into this area right here, do the same thing. I don't think there's going to be like a whole lot of light. There might be a whole lot of light right there, but the rest of it is kind of going to be, have a lot of shadows. Again, with Kerby, you tend to lose little things like this if you're not careful. I can't tell you how many times I've colored something that's not supposed to be colored. What's cool about it is because so much is going on, a lot of times you can just kind of blend it in and you won't be able to tell. I'm going to come up here now and I'm going to hit some of these smaller branches. Because it's so detailed, I'm not going to put a whole lot of different colors in there. I'll probably add some as I go to kind of give it a little bit more detail, but I'm not going to go extreme like I do down here. And that's all the branches I see at the moment. That doesn't mean another one or two won't pop out as I continue. Right? And now with this part here, I'm going to do 941 light umber, which, because it's really sharp, isn't looking so light at the moment. That's okay. I'm okay with it. Let's go with it. And again, at the end, if you want to take a white gel pen or something like that and lighten up certain areas, you totally can do that. That will help it a little bit. My whole goal right now is just get color on the paper. And now I would go over and add another layer or two on this tree. So again, 947. I'm just going to come in here now, and I can kind of see where I want to add a little bit more of the darker colors to make it pop a little bit. Kind of like that there. So I want there to definitely be a difference between this area here and this here. I think it would be like this area would be kind of indented compared to this area, so that's why I want to make sure I put a little bit of shadow there, because usually when an area is indented, there's shadows in that area. And I know there's probably a better word than indented, but that's the one that's popping in my head right now, so it's the one I'm going to use. One of the things that I like about color pencils is you just can keep layering and layering and layering until you get the desired effect that you're looking for. So if you don't like the way it's looking, just keep adding layers. At some point you'll know when it's what you want it to be. I just want to break up some of this here, which is why I'm kind of going into some of the areas that I didn't before. And again, it's a lot easier to darken something up than it is to lighten it up. So if you look at your tree and you don't think it's got enough contrast, or it needs some darkness somewhere else, like, just go ahead and throw it in there. But if you start really dark and you color in a lot of the tree and then you try to go back behind and lighten it, it's just not going to work. Kind of like that. I think it's popping quite a bit there. Now I'm going to come up here, and I think there would be a little bit more shadow in this area here. Wouldn't be so much the same color, so I'm just going to darken up around that a little bit. Okay, that looks a lot better. Now in these areas up here where I did the light on the branches, I'm just right next to just a little tiny bit right next to where the branch meets the foliage. I'm putting just like a little tiny splash of darker brown. Kind of like what would be a shadow there. I mean, it's maybe like not even 1/8 of an inch. It might be like a 1/16 of an inch, like the tip of your pencil worth right there, just to kind of make it a little darker at that point. Again, these are really small details in a really big picture, so keep that in mind. You don't have to do that. It's just what I'm doing. And then this one I'm going to do just a little bit bigger. So this one will be like, see if you can see the width of the pencil point. And then I'm pulling it over because this branch separates. So I think it would be darker in between where the branches are separating at. And this has a lot of foliage around it, so that would be darker. And then again, right here, I think this would be darker in this area. I don't want to do too much. That I'm going to make pretty dark. Again, I can always add colors in later. Now I'm going to go through with my dark brown, and I'm actually going to start up. Most of these areas are too small to like add anything additional to, so I'm just going to do a little bit right there. Again, I don't think I'm going to put a whole lot of this color in now that I have some contrast going on. Alright, I'm going to leave it at that. And now I'm going to do my 1082 chocolate. And this chocolate is kind of more like a reddy brown than the other browns that I'm using, which I kind of like because it gives it a little bit more character. I'm just going to kind of throw this in. Now you can choose to blend this if you want, but I'm not going to because I don't think a tree should be super smooth. So I'm going to kind of leave this with a little bit of texture. If you blend it out, you're probably going to lose a little bit of that texture, so keep that in mind. But you can use a blender pencil to blend that out so it's more even. Alright, 941 light umber. And I'm just going to go through these other spots. And it's okay to start a part of the image. If you get stumped, walk away from it for a little while and come back. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Let me zoom out a little bit. So there is the base of my tree, and I will do all the other trees in the same way. The ones in the back I might make darker than the ones toward the front. I'm not sure yet. I might do all the same. I don't know. But a lot of times, you know, the further away from your field of vision and the further away from the light, it's going to get darker. So this one may look very, very dark back here. Same with this one. I probably should have done this one a little lighter, but I'm not sorry. I like the way it looks. Alright, so I would usually wait to see how the rest of this is going to look before I added in any black. But just to show you what I'm doing, you can decide, you know, at this point or further through if you want to go ahead and add black. These areas at the base of the tree are going to be extremely dark. So I'm probably going to wind up having to add a little black anyway. So I'm just going to add it a little bit over top of that, the darkest brown I used, just to help out a little bit. And then of course along the edges where you're breaking up your tree right here, kind of like that, just to kind of help out just a little bit, separate the tree from the foliage. Again, you don't have to add black. You can go with the way it is if you like the way it looks. I kind of like a more contrasty image. So I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of black now, but I wanted to show you how I'm doing it in case you're coloring along and you find out later on in the image that you need to add a little. I've been trying to get away from adding black. I don't know why. I guess I'm trying to teach myself how not to use black unless I have to. Because you can't get any darker than that, you know? There's no real way to shade black. There's ways to shade gray, but there's not ways to shade black. Alright, and I think I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Put a little tiny bit there. And again, you can come back through, you can add more, you can add less. Well, you can't really add less, but you can add more. I'm going to go with my 946 here, and just right here, I don't like that, so I'm going to add a little bit more. Come back in and blend that in a little bit. Again, you can always wait until you keep going with the image and decide if you need to do that. Alright, so onto the tree branches here. I've selected 4 colors. I don't know if I'm going to add additional colors to this, but we'll start with these 4. So the first one is going to be PC109, which is Prussian Green. And again, just like I did down here, I'm going to find the areas that are really shaded, and I'm going to zoom in on just this top part since it's not all the way down the tree. So all these areas that are like really shaded, that is what I'm going to focus in on first with this. And I may not go up the whole tree with this. I may go ahead and just do a couple of branches and then come back and show you what it looks like when it's completely done. So I'm just going to start with my darker areas and throw that Prussian green in. Again, this may not be dark enough. I may need to come back and add an even darker green than this. There's like a ton of foliage on this tree, and it would probably take me a good half hour to color all of that. So I might, again, just stick with this bottom part here. Once you get the idea, you just take it the rest of the way up this tree, and then I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like when it's done. So the next color I chose is 912 Apple Green. And I'm going to go right next to that color. And this one's a little bright, so if you don't want to use a green as bright as this, that's fine. I'm going to go right next to that darker green, and I'm going to take this a little further up into the image because I think this might be like the main color of the trees for me. Come to this one here. And I try to use at least 3 different colors. Usually I use at least 4, but my videos I'm trying to use at least 3 different colors. A light, a mid-tone, and a dark. And I have found that usually the more colors you use, the less flat your image looks. I'm going to come back in now with, I think it's Spring Green. It happens to be missing its spot right with the name, but it's a PC913. And I'm still going to try to leave it a little bit open for the lightest shade of green I have, but I'm just going to come up into this apple green and go around where the apple green was. like that. And then I'm going to come in with my lightest and brightest green, which is 989 Chartreuse. And I don't like this shade as much because it's a little too yellow for me, so I'm probably going to put just a little bit on there like that, and then go back with that spring green over top of that to kind of make it not as yellow. So you got that. I don't have very many darker shades of green. Give me one second. See, the 908 I have is too cool, I think. It's a cool shade of green. I'm already using 109. Alright. So you can either add like a dark brown if your green isn't dark enough here, or you can add a little bit of black, but you need to be very light-handed if you do that. Maybe even like sepia you could probably use to darken up the green areas a little bit. I'm going to try this dark brown first and kind of see what happens. I'm going to go right over this darker spots to just try to darken up the green just a little bit. And I'm not quite loving the way that looks. I think it's now this brown is too brown. So I will use a little bit of black. Again, very, very light-handed. And then I will go right over top of what I just did with that black with the 109 Prussian Green. Because I don't actually want it to look black. I just want it to be a darker shade of green. Alright, and then again, I'm going to go back in with, start going back down through. So 912, my lighter green, my next lightest shade of green. Pull that out a little more. And I'm blending right into that darker shade. And then the spring green, which is 913. I think on the rest of this tree, I'm going to go really, I'm not going to use a whole lot of this 989. It's going to be very small area that I put it in. I think it's a little too yellow. You may even want to switch it or just use 913 for your last color. Let me see if I can find a lighter shade of green that is not on the yellow side. You could do like a pale sage, but that might be too light. I think that might be too light, the pale sage. So you might want to just stop at the 913. Yeah, I would probably stop at the 913. Again, if you want to use the lightest shade of yellow, just do it sparingly. Alright, I'll be back a minute when I finish up the rest of this tree. Alright guys, I'm not finished yet, but I wanted to go ahead and pop back on here and show you guys where I put the PC 109 Prussian Green. I put them in all of those areas that are up there so far. I did add a little bit of black to some spots, like right there. Not a whole lot, and I may add some more as I go through, just to, like in here I did some black, you know, again where I think there would be the deepest shadows, and I did it right over top this 109 Prussian Green. So that's what I did so far, and then again a majority of the rest of this is going to be the 912 with a little bit of 913 and maybe a touch of 989. So I'll come back and show you again what I do when I add the next color. Alright, that is roughly where I put 912 apple green. I just again went over the darker areas, and around them I want a majority of the color to be this apple green. So there's like just a few spots left, and I'm going to go ahead and put the 913 in there. And then some of these larger areas, like right here, I might just put like a little tiny bit of the 989 just as like a little bit of a highlight, but I'm not going to go overboard with that. So again, the second shade of the lighter green is 912 apple green, and that is where I put it. Alright everyone, so I went ahead and I added in the 913 and the little splashes of 989. There's not very many of the 989. You can see it here just on the very tips of a couple of the branches there. The rest of that is the 913. But that is how I do the trees, and will continue to do the trees in this particular picture. Again, if you're going back here to do these, you might want to add some of the sepia in, which is a way darker brown, kind of, it's an ashy brown, like leaning on black. So if you pull that color into the trees in the back, it'll help give it a little bit of depth. And then the rest of this I'm going to do exactly the same way. Obviously, again, when you look at the foliage, the darker the foliage goes, the further back. So you're going to have a lot more of the dark color than the light color as it gets closer to the bases of the trees in this area and stuff. There's going to be a lot more of that shading. So you just want to continue with what you were doing the whole way through. And then when you're done that, you can choose similar shades of green for the bottom, or you can do maybe some cooler shades of green instead of the warmer shades of the green. These are more like of a yellowy greens, so you could go more cool greens down here if you wanted to, or if you want to bring this color down here as well, you can do the same thing. So that's what I'm going to do, and hopefully I'll shoot another video on some of the other parts of this image. And if I go ahead and finish these trees, I'll go ahead and stick the finished image on my Facebook page at Shhh Art Online. And go ahead and post your Kerby Rosanes images on my Facebook page at Shhh Art Online so I can see what you've been up to. Thank you everyone for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, color happy, and remember, shh, it's our little secret.